come in and find a seat, please. We'd like to get started. We're hoping everyone will find a seat very quickly, please, so we can get started on time. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Stephanie Mulaney, and I'm the president of League of Women Voters of Appleton. And I want to thank you for your interest in this forum and your support of the democratic process. Before we go any further, though, I'd like us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight, we'd like to thank Tim Hanna and Josh Duclos for entering into the mayoral race. I'll get it right. They are willing to run for the office and serve the community, and for this, we citizens are grateful. Tonight, we hope to have at least some of your questions answered. Residents are invited to submit questions to the League website, but some of these questions will be heard tonight, and the League has a couple of questions. We will also invite you, the audience, to write any questions you have on note cards. I believe we have sheets tonight, and pass them to an attendant. We have a couple of people, if you raise your hand so we know who we're looking for. We have two people who will gather those up, and then we will take care of those questions up here. There are League women who pursue the questions before they are sent forth. This is not to eliminate any of your questions, but rather to group them in like categories so that we have the opportunity to ask as many questions as covering a variety of issues. So just know that if it doesn't sound exactly like your question, we'll try to honor that to make sure that we cover everything. We have a timekeeper up in the front here, and we have always found that the process is a good way to keep us on track and moving along. It's not meant to cut people off or to diminish the importance of response, but simply to use our time wisely, and the library does like us to get out by 9. So, just so you know. Jackie is our Director of Voter Services for the League of Women Voters for Appleton, and she has planned and organized this forum with her committee, and she will be presenting the questions to the candidates. She will explain the time, the 2-minute introductions, and all of those things when she gets up here. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I now have so many cards, I've lost my notes. Okay, let me add my gratitude to the candidates for your time this evening to share your viewpoints with our voters. And thank you to the audience for caring enough to be informed when you cast your votes in the spring elections on April 5th. I have the pleasure to moderate the forum this evening. I have some prepared questions, as Stephanie described, some from the League and some submitted from interested citizens. After 2 or 3 of these, we'll move to questions from the audience. Jeannie Roberts is our timekeeper. She has paddles with the time. She has a stopwatch. So she's going to keep us on pace this evening. The first piece we'll have them do is to introduce themselves, give us their background, and why on earth they want to be a mayor. And I'm going to start this because I'm an English major in alphabetical order. And then we will alternate. So the first question will be 2 minutes. After that, because of the number of questions I have, we'll do 1.5 minutes.
Great. Well, thanks so much. And thank you to the League for hosting tonight's forum. Thank you to everyone who's chosen to attend. I'm incredibly passionate about civic engagement and people being involved in the decisions that govern their lives. And so to see so many here who have decided to spend their Tuesday evening, is it a Tuesday? I can't remember anymore. Here at this forum really does mean a lot and says a lot about our community. And that is really the essence of the answer to the second part of the question. The reason that I want to run for mayor is because I think that I can contribute to our community. I was not lucky enough to be born in Appleton. I actually was born and raised in Slinger, Wisconsin, which I call a bustling metropolis of 5,000 people, just about an hour south of Appleton. I first came to Appleton for college and arrived here in the fall of 1998. As a freshman at Lawrence University, I thought I had hit the big time. I still remember driving down College Avenue and seeing the skyscrapers, and it was quite an experience for a kid from Slinger, I tell you what. But the real important thing that I learned is that this is a community where you can make an impact. And you have the power, every individual, to choose a way that you want to be involved and to create this into the community that you want to live in. I know people who've been doing this their entire lives. They were born and raised here, and they've been involved for generations and decades. And so I feel like not the right to be a leader. I don't feel the obligation to be a leader. I feel a calling to be a leader. And I believe that Appleton has made tremendous progress in the time that I've been a resident here. I believe we have had very good leadership to get leadership is required. And so I'm going to explain to you tonight what my priorities are for the future of this city and why I hope you'll consider voting for me when you go to polls on Tuesday, April 5th. I didn't call my campaign Josh Duplo for mayor. I called it Refresh Appleton because that's what we need. We need to refresh Appleton, and that's what's going to take us to the next level. Thank you.
Mr. Hanna.
I want to add my thanks to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring the forum. They do a great job of, in a very neutral way, bringing people together and asking questions that people are curious about. So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. You know, I have spent a lot of time, and I spend a lot of time with kids in the schools, and I have a lot of classes that come and who are learning about Appleton and learning about local government. And I always give them the chance to ask me questions, whatever question they want to ask. And that's another story, some of the fun questions that I get. But one of the questions I get a lot is, what's the hardest thing you have to do as the mayor? And the answer to that question is, the hardest thing to do as a mayor is sometimes you have to tell people what they don't want to hear. That's the hardest part of being a leader, is after listening and you come to a point where you need to make a decision, somebody's going to be disappointed. And it's hard to tell people that. But that's what we do. And that's what I've done for 20 years. You know that you're going to get the truth from me, not what I think you want to hear. And we've had great progress. And I appreciate that Josh has said that we have a good city and we've made a lot of progress and a lot of good things have happened, because that is the truth. And I think we agree on that. A lot of things are good about this city. But they're good because we've never settled for just being good. It's always looking at that next project, that next, where do we need to go? Understanding the trends in society so that we stay on the cutting edge of those trends. That's what's going to keep us competitive. And that's why I want to run, that's why I'm running for mayor for another 4 years, because there are so many trends that are hitting us hard. We are on the cusp of being a leader in so many areas and addressing those trends. You don't want to chase change, you want to be the change.
Thank you. And now we'll start with Mr. Hanna and then go to Mr. Duplo on this next question. So, what do you believe is the role of mayor?
The role of the mayor. Okay, how long do we have? The role of the mayor in the city of Appleton is, there's different forms of local government all across the state. In Appleton, mayor is a full-time job. And so, in fact, by city ordinance, you're not allowed to have any other job. It is full-time, and believe me, it is full-time. So there's two parts. This is how I explain it. There's two parts to being the mayor. There is the public part. There is the speaking. There is being the leader. There is going out, there's talking to kids, talking to groups, talking about the vision, talking about projects, and informing people, and getting them excited and getting them engaged. And then there's the other part. There's the part that people don't see. And that's the day-to-day operations of a very large organization and a very diverse organization. Over 600 full-time employees, a budget of over $150 million. And that needs to be managed. In Appleton, that's the job of the mayor. is to manage that on a day-to-day basis. Hold people accountable, making sure that our employees are engaged in what they're doing, that they know why they come to work, that they're involved in helping the city accomplish the things that we've set out in our strategic plan and in our goals and in our objectives. That's the everyday work of the mayor. You'll always see the mayor out there speaking and doing those types of things and espousing a vision and things like that. The other part is that hard day-to-day work.
Great. There is an administrative role that goes with being mayor, overseeing the staff, administering the budget, organizing plans. That's very true. But the most important role of the mayor is the role that no one else can do, and that is to be the chief visionary for our community. If we're going to be on the cutting edge of change and a national leader, the way that I believe we can be, then we need a mayor who's not just sharing publicly in our region all the great things about Appleton, but is doing so on a national level. Participating in organizations and visiting with other leaders, speaking at conferences, and showcasing the powerful examples that we have in our community of that from which others can learn. One of those examples is the collaboration that happens here. And if we want to be recognized as a national leader in collaborative efforts, we are perfectly positioned to do that. And we need somebody who's going to be our chief advocate and our chief spokesperson on the national stage to share that message. And that's something only the mayor can do. And that applies locally as well. It isn't just about touring the country and sharing what's so wonderful about our community, though I do think that is the most important thing a mayor can do. On the local level, sharing that vision and making sure that every single employee and resident of this city sees their place in that vision, that they find their role in making that vision a reality, that's how we find success. And then all the plans and all the work will really lead to the success we know we can have.
Question 2, we'll start with Mr. Duclos and then finish with Mr. Hanna. Since the candidates, I'm reading this as it was written, since the candidates are so focused on downtown business area of Appleton, how do all these activities benefit the city as a whole? And do any of the revenues help provide city services?
Yeah, that's a great question.
We'll start with that again.
Yeah, can you read that one more time?
Sure. Since the candidates are so focused on the downtown business areas of Appleton, how do all these activities benefit the city as a whole? And do any of the revenues help provide city services?
Yeah, fantastic question. And there has been a huge focus on downtown in this campaign. You may notice my lapel pin for being a downtown placemaker. I'm on the board of Appleton Downtown Incorporated, and so I am heavily involved in living and working and playing downtown. And the reason that everyone in Appleton should support a thriving downtown is because a growing tax base, a thriving business district, and diverse housing options in our downtown will be the key to keeping an affordable level of taxation throughout the entire city for years to come. The only way that we can maintain the affordability of our city is if we continue to grow the tax base. And I am vice chair of the City Plan Commission. And so in that role, we administer the land use plan for the city. And I very often hear from neighbors who have a multifamily project going into their neighborhood that they don't want to see that they're worried about how that's going to change the character of their neighborhood. But a great place for multifamily residential is in the downtown. It's a great place to add that tax base, to add those housing options, and to give people a chance to be in a walkable home from which they can go to work, they can go out and see a Broadway show, they could go to a restaurant and support those downtown businesses. And so the tax revenue from downtown businesses, just like the tax revenue from any house within the city limits, contributes to our overall city budget and contributes to the way that we pay for services. So everybody truly does benefit from a thriving downtown, no matter if you go downtown or not.
Thank you. Mr. Hanna?
I look at it this way. Downtown is the heart of the city. And if your heart isn't strong, the rest of the city will not be strong. It is the heartbeat. It's where things start and emanate from there. When you think of any city, name a city, one of the first images that comes to your mind is their downtown. So we can all name cities that I could throw out some names, and your first image is going to be, how's that city's downtown? Is it dying or is it vibrant? So that is the important role of keeping downtown healthy. And it's not just for Appleton, it's for the region. And I'll give you a good example. The Fox River Mall. Remember how hard as a city we fought against the Fox River Mall 25 years ago, 30 years ago? We fought hard, right? And it happened. And what we predicted happened. The tax base moved out, the big box stores moved out, right? Luckily, we had some good things happen, and we have a vibrant downtown. Today, the manager of the Fox River Mall will tell you how important it is that downtown Appleton be strong. He knows that if downtown Appleton is failing, the mall is going to fail too. It's not going to draw business in the people here. That's an important thing. However, it is not the end all be all. We need diversity of tax base across the city. Downtown is important, probably the most important, but we need diversity across the city, in our neighborhoods, in our business parks, to really grow our city.
Thank you. And for this next question, we'll start with Mr. Hanna and then finish with Mr. Dickel. So kind of springing from what we were just talking about, should businesses be active taxpayers or should they be subsidized by the city?
Well, that's a really good question. Should businesses be active taxpayers or subsidized? All right. My first reaction to that question is I appreciate the term taxpayer, but I often talk about the difference between what is a taxpayer and what is a citizen. Citizenship is active participation in your community. So I think businesses as entities should be citizens, should participate in the community, representing their business. It's what makes us strong. And good citizens pay taxes for the services that are citizenship. So the question is, should they be subsidized? And I'm not quite sure what the asker means about subsidized. There are incentives that we provide for certain projects that may benefit certain businesses, but that is so that we can stay competitive with our neighbors. When our neighbors and other cities across the state and across the country are offering incentives, we need to be able to provide some commensurate level of incentive if we want to stay competitive in terms of attracting and keeping tax base. So that is very important.
Okay.
By state constitution, every property owner is a taxpayer. We are prohibited as a city from giving a business a property tax abatement. We can't tell them that if you're going to locate here, you don't have to pay property taxes, because our state constitution prohibits that. Other states do that very successfully, and it's a key part of their economic development strategy. When I worked at the Fox Cities Regional Partnership, I learned a lot about attracting business and growing the business we already have here. And I know for a fact that property tax is a big decision point for businesses. And so they also benefit from an affordable city because we have a growing tax base. So how do we grow a tax base? One of the very few tools that local governments have to use is called tax increment financing. And this is a way that local governments can band together to help offset some of the costs of public improvements, we're talking roads and utilities, things like that, in addition to some incentives that might help make a project feasible in order to get that project to happen in their city. And when those incentives are given, they are then paid back with the revenues that come from that project. And my very first job at the State Department of Revenue was to write the very first ever manual on tax increment financing in Wisconsin. So I'm really familiar with that program. It's not a subsidy, it is an incentive, and it is important that we participate actively as a community, as a region, and as a state in attracting businesses by using every tool at our disposal, including tax increment financing.
Our next question, we'll start with Josh and Mr. Duclos, and then we'll go to Mr. Hanna. What do you think is the city's role in replacing the Thompson Center Community Center?
This is a fantastic question, and one that when this campaign got underway wasn't even on the table because the news has so recently broken about the changes that are happening at the Thompson Community Center. So I know the city has a role of convener and facilitator. They need to bring the parties together and participate in a group discussion And I know that Tim is participating in that discussion. So he's doing what I believe the city should be doing. I think this gets to a deeper issue is should the city fund a senior center? And if that is the issue, that's not something that I would be supportive of. And it's not because I don't favor services for seniors. It's because I believe that if the city is going to put our shared tax dollars into a community center, it should be for everyone, not specifically geared towards one age demographic. At the last debate, we got a question about a teen center, and I gave the same answer. I believe that a shared use space that features offices and meeting rooms and other things should be open to the entire community. And I actually believe that we could really make some progress on the library project if we thought about building the library into a building like that. If we actually built a community center that included a library instead of just a library, I think we could expand the appeal of that project, we could stretch the resources that would go into that project, and we would be able to highlight our creativity and collaboration to the rest of the country. There are other communities that are doing this successfully already. The architect that the library is working with knows about these projects.
This is one of those questions you're going to hear a fair amount of agreement on. The city does have a role, and we've been so fortunate that the Thompson Community Center has existed for as long as it has, with community support in the form of a nonprofit, and that's been wonderful. Well, here we are at a crossroads, and the city does have a role. But I think what's important to understand is, I know there was a lot of reaction right away saying, city, what are you going to do? When you look at the users of that facility, they come from all over the valley. And so is it fair to burden the taxpayers of Appleton with building a senior center when we know that a lot of the use is going to come from other municipalities, people from other municipalities? The library idea is actually one of the ideas that needs to be explored. It was one of the first thoughts that we had, that the people at the library had, is this is, I think, a really good opportunity. And so it's a good opportunity because if you think of the way that the library is funded, the library is actually funded through a formula that shares the cost through use from non-city residents. So we do get reimbursed, and kudos to Allegheny County, because the state statute says they only have to reimburse us 70% of our costs. Over the years, we've worked with Allegheny County, and they are reimbursing us 100% of the cost to provide services to non-Appleton residents at the library. So it helps to answer that parity question of funding, but there are other options that the community is talking about, and the leadership group from around the community is, the first meeting is next Monday, and I'm sure we're going to define a process to fully vet all the options and get feedback from the community so we can make the best choice. Yep.
Okay, we are going to start with Mr. Hanna and then Mr. Duclos on this question. Sometimes you hear folks complaining about wasted money on studies that just sit on a shelf. What have the studies accomplished recently and what is in the works?
That's a really good question, and we hear that, and I think governments hear this all across the country. Oh, you waste so much money on these consultants. What do you do? Well, in Appleton, what we do is we take those studies and we take the objectives that are outlined and we actually start to weave those objectives into our budgeting process and into our planning process and into our goals and objectives for our leadership at the city so that things get done. And I'll give you some examples. The last 2 downtown plans have essentially been completed. There are a number of objectives, and we're fortunate that we can say that. We're in the process of writing the next, I call it the next chapter for downtown, not rewriting the downtown plan, because the past one was successful. And there are a lot of examples in downtown about that. Let's talk about the parking study that was recently completed and adopted by the City Council. We've implemented the first 2 elements of that and are about to implement the third this year. And that's, we've worked that into the budget. The element that's coming this year is the ramps will be changed back to pay-as-you-exit, but we will finally address the need for people not to have to use cash and carry quarters and dollars around with them to get in and out of our parking ramps. It's something we've heard it loud and clear, and it took some time to get it into the budget and work it in. that change is going to happen this year. And so I can give you a lot of examples, but I feel very good that when we spend that kind of money, it doesn't sit on the shelf. We find a way to work those objectives into our work plan.
Thank you. Mr. Duco?
Thank you very much. As Tim described, there's a lot of plans happening. There's a lot of plans still to come. There's a transit study underway right now, exploring different modes of mobility, how people are getting into and out of our city, how we can best improve efficiency of that. There's a study happening at the East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, looking at the West College Avenue corridor from the airport into downtown, and how we might improve access and mobility in that corridor. So there's a lot of studies happening, and I'll just state very frankly, I think employing experts to conduct studies like this is actually a very wise use of tax dollars. Because the alternative would be to ask our city staff to become experts on something they're not an expert on, and to write a study that looks at all the best practices and all the different options. And that would take 10 times as long for them to do as it would take a true expert that we can hire through a competitive process and be able to get all the best practices and all the best suggestions of what has been tried and what's working elsewhere. And that's something I think we can actually do more of as a city, is learning from other communities. There's a lot of them out there, and I hope we get a chance to talk about some of them. But I want to talk a little bit about what happens when plans are not observed. And again, as a member of Plan Commission, I've seen that happen regularly, particularly in the last several months, where a rezoning proposal comes forward, and before we can approve the rezoning, first we have to amend the comprehensive plan. Because that project has actually been moved all the way through the process to get to the point of Plan Commission approval, and it doesn't actually fit with our comprehensive land use plan. And so first we have to amend that land use plan, then we can do the rezoning, and then we can actually move forward with that project. So plans are not always seen through to completion, and sometimes that's necessary, other times it's not.
Thank you, Mr. Duco. We'll start with you on this question, and then Mr. Hanna. And this kind of is a second part to, I understand there was a committee for looking at compromises on streets, that parking was eliminated because of bike lanes, and street parking by Reed to St. E's, plus other streets where churches are, for example. So is there a committee looking at those kinds of parking issues?
I cannot speak to any committees that exist currently on that. I'm not a part of any. I don't know about any. That doesn't mean they're not there, because I don't work in City Hall right now, but I hope to on April 6th. What I can say is that there are oftentimes opportunities for residents of a neighborhood to participate in plans and contribute their ideas to the formation of what's going to happen next. And I've been a part of those planning processes. I've carried out public hearings. I attend these kind of meetings regularly, and I've seen the number of people that come to these, and it's great to see those who do choose to come and be a part of it. But I've also seen when people show up after the fact, and they want to change the plan after public participation has ended. And that's troubling, because the phase for public participation has already closed. And so I've already talked a lot in this campaign about the need for City Hall to listen more effectively to residents, to offer additional opportunities for people to provide their input and their ideas into these projects. Because when we're going to invest tens of millions of dollars into a project, extending the public listening period by a couple months, holding a couple more meetings, that's not really a big cost when you're talking about a 20 or 30 or 40-year life of a project. If we're going to build a new public library, I want to make sure we're getting it right, and that it's going to actually serve the needs and meet the desires of everybody who wants to use it. And so that might take a little more than the minimum effort for public input.
First of all, I would say there's a big difference between a public library and bike lanes. Absolutely, we're going to take a lot more time on a large capital project and engage as many people as we can. Josh is right that people come late to the party. That doesn't mean that we don't listen. For the life of me, I wish there was a way to implement the bike plan with a little less acrimony. And because of that, let me answer the question first. Is there a committee?
Yes.
No, there's not a committee. It's under the jurisdiction of one of our committees for the city council. And so when these things come up, it will be a public meeting and people will be invited to give their input. I took the opportunity to reach out to the Wisconsin Bike Federation, and they have experts on their staff, and they share their expertise with them. And talk to them about can you give us some examples? Can you give us some ideas? It's what Josh just said, that you reach out to those experts. And they were more than happy to come here, talk to our staff, and talk to us about different ways of thinking of how to, what a street might look like, to be able to preserve some parking, but yet continue to implement the bike plan. I'm looking forward to engaging the city council in those discussions, and those discussions will be open discussions, and we invite pro-bikers and maybe not pro-bikers to come and participate in those discussions.
Okay, this one is, you might have referenced a part of the answers to this question, but since I have this many cards on it, I'm going to read it again in this format. And we'll start with Mr. Hanna again. How will you expand and protect current bicycle infrastructure, specifically the Mason Street bike lanes? Should they remain as they are? And how are you going to help the plans be successful?
Well, I think that's a lot of what I just talked about. Mason Street, we had a lot of public hearing, we had a lot of public input on Mason Street, and we made a decision. And I think it would be a mistake to go backwards on that. I think that people on Mason Street are getting used to the change. We're seeing more and more bicycle traffic on Mason Street. We have tremendous participation in our community from bikers. We've actually won national bike challenges the last few years. We did. The people in this community, I think that's awesome. But what that's telling me is we got to keep plugging away on that infrastructure for bikes. When you talk about the future, it's one of those trends that I mentioned in my opening statement. One of those trends is walkability, bikeability, and diversity of transportation choices. More and more people are choosing to go car-free. So we need safe facilities for them if they choose to ride their bike, even when it's snowing. We do that, and I can tell you this, we need to do a better, I will state it, the city needs to do a better job of clearing those bike lanes in the winter months for those people who want to use those facilities that we've invested in. But it's one of those future trends, we need to stay on the front edge of that. And I'm happy to say that because we engaged people and adopted the bike plan, we're in a good place, but we've got to keep going, we have to move forward.
Yes, thank you. I was really thrilled to see Appleton moving forward with implementation of a bike plan because I think a complete network of bicycle lanes built for commuting in addition to recreation is a table stakes minimum to attract the kind of creative professionals and young entrepreneurs that are going to fuel the growth of our economy in the 21st century. So it's not a question of should we have bike lanes. We have to and will have bike lanes. I think the real issue here is trying to come up with a system where everybody can feel like their interests and needs have been honored in the process. And when I was talking about major infrastructure improvements, I am talking about bike lanes because they're not inexpensive. Roads are expensive, and bike lanes are part of roads. So I would certainly not say that a road that was put in 2-3 years ago, we should go and rip it up to change it because that's a waste of money. But when we continue to plan for bike lanes in the future, I think it would be foolish not to learn from what we've done in the past. When we've had a tricky implementation process in one neighborhood, we have to go and evaluate that process and figure out what wasn't working there. How can we do better the next neighborhood that we go to? That's not saying we did it wrong, that's saying we can do it better. And that's the premise of my whole campaign. It's not that Appleton's bad, it's that Appleton can be better. And we can do better on implementing bike lanes. And what does that look like? I don't know, but when I'm mayor, that's a priority of mine, and it has been this whole campaign, is to listen.
Thank you, Mr. Dupo. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Dupo on this one, and then Mr. Hanna. Please give an example of a large organization or group that you managed, and talk about the challenge and the success, how you measured the success.
Yeah. I have not managed a large organization before in my professional career. I'm 35 years old. I've had a number of jobs since I've been here because I have been single-mindedly pursuing my passion for community growth and development. And so all of my opportunities that I've had for managing organizations have come in the volunteer realm. And the one I would choose to talk about is where I worked with Appleton Downtown Incorporated to create the Creative Downtown Appleton, the creative placemaking organization, where we had to file and get a 501c3 designation. We've had to do fundraising and provide a budget. We have to manage projects. And we also need to show that we're successful because we have investors, donors, people who want to see that their donations are going to a good outcome. And we can see those examples of success all around us. Park the Place, which is the area next to Copper Rock and the 222 building. You may have once known it as having some pretty ugly, uncomfortable red metal benches and some large concrete planters. And now it's got a lovely mural and some nice flexible seating, a stage for performances, and some nice lighting. That's just one example. There's a number of murals throughout downtown, not all of which were done by the creative team. And I'd say that is our key measure of success, is that we don't have to do all the placemaking. We're encouraging, inspiring, and enabling others to take ownership and to complete projects. And I think that experience alone shows that I am the right leader to enable our region to collaborate in new ways and reach new excellence.
Thank you. Mr. Hanna?
Yeah, this is a management question, and it's about managing people. And so I've been doing that for 20 years with the city, and we have built a system. In fact, I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you that when people ask me over my career, what am I most proud of? And I tell them the answer is probably not what they think it's going to be. It's not a building or a project. It's what they don't see. It's how we get our work done. It's how we manage our work and how we go about it. I'm very proud to say that we have about 630 full-time employees that work for the city. And I know that if you go up and ask them, they know what the city's mission is. They know why they come to work, because of the hard work that we've done. We've built an accountability system for our employees. Each of them have 5 core competencies that are related to their ability to get a raise. It's an accountability system that other cities are looking at. And Josh says that that's what we should do. This is a great example because I have a lot of questions from other cities saying, how did you do that? When other cities are looking at their financial policies, oftentimes they're told, call Appleton. When I talk to the people at the League of Municipalities and they say, we get calls from cities and villages all the time, do you have a good example of an employee handbook? Their first answer is, call Appleton. We have set the standard for professional management and holding our employees accountable to achieve the results that we desire.
Okay, the next question, we'll start with Mr. Hanna and then go to Mr. Duco. The tax on my home has been held about the same for 25 years. How will your proposals be able to do the same?
I love that question. It hasn't been easy. But it's part of the accountability system that we put in place. One of the first things I did when I became mayor is we changed the way we did our budget. We do what's called performance-based budgeting, which links goals and objectives to the money that we spend. I always say people don't mind spending money if they know what they're getting for it. And we've taken the time, the hard work to define what they get for their money. And we measure it so that we know we're going in the right direction. Over the years, we have taken significant reductions in state aid, what used to be called shared revenue. There's no formula anymore, it's just about the same every year. We've taken some pretty big hits. And so what that means, if we want to increase our bottom line, and our bottom line is service to our citizens, if we want to do that, we have to find a way to be more efficient and lower our overhead, our cost of doing business. We've done that. I can proudly say to you today, after 20 years, I have fewer city employees today than I had 20 years ago. And in the meantime, we have more firefighters and we have more police officers, and we've invested in the things that are important and have found ways to be more efficient in the way that we deliver service so that you can ask a question like that and say, how will you do that? I think the best indicator of future results is our past performance, especially on the question of taxes and how we handle that.
Thank you, Mr. Duco.
Thanks. One of the keys to my entire campaign is the notion that we need to work more with our partners and our neighbors to deliver services and achieve goals that we share. And that, along with continued economic growth, is how we will be able to continue keeping our tax burden flat. Or, if we're doing it right, actually decrease that tax burden. And there are examples in the city where we've missed opportunities to do that. And I've talked about these throughout my campaign. There are places where investment could have materialized, where outside developers want to build a project, and for one reason or another, they haven't been able to do that. And the people who live immediately next to a new development may not want that to be in their backyard. But the truth of the matter is we live in a city. And in fact, we live in a city that's in the middle of an urban region. We're surrounded by other communities. And a lot of those communities have lower tax burdens than Appleton. And so when you're evaluating where you want to live or where you want to set up your business, you're not just comparing one neighborhood in Appleton to another. You're comparing Neenah and Menasha and Greenville and Kaukauna and Harrison and Chilton maybe, and maybe New London. You're looking all over the region because our extensive infrastructure network of connections makes that possible. But we need to do a better job of seizing opportunities for large-scale investment and growth that we can put a great big boost in our tax base. And that way, when we do the kinds of management techniques that Tim's talking about, we can actually reduce that tax burden.
Okay, we will start with Mr. Duclo on this one, and then Mr. Hanna. Appleton should do more for arts funding. The Green Bay Symphony is no more due to the funding problems. The PAC is overpriced for most, $1,000 for two at the Broadway series. How will you help out the arts?
That's me first?
That is you first.
Great. This has really been the crux of my 9 years of being a professional here, is supporting the arts, advancing opportunities for people to get involved. And I just really quick put a plug in for all of the free arts and cultural opportunities available to the community at Lawrence University, my alma mater, where you can on any given day find a recital or some kind of concert or play available free to the public. And I think that is an under-recognized asset in our city. But something like the Performing Arts Center, that's absolutely something we need. And the city does already support the Performing Arts Center through the room tax in a special way that other communities don't. And that's going to continue until the Performing Arts Center doesn't need that support anymore, and I hope that's very soon because it's a wildly successful anchor for our city. And it's the kind of thing that attracts large-scale employers, which again is a key to maintaining the affordability of the city. So what can the city do? There's a great example of something that I helped to lead the charge on, which was to repeal the ban on painted signs in our city. You've seen the beautiful murals that have sprouted up in the last several months. That's because we repealed the ban on beautiful painted murals in our city. And that was a policy that was around for a long time. We knew we wanted more public art. Murals was a key part of that. And so we took action to repeal that ban. And so we've got to find other opportunities to change city policy. But I believe the arts they're not a basic need. They're something everybody should be able to enjoy. They enrich all of our lives. But it's not food, it's not shelter. And so the city needs to focus on providing basic needs and services to people.
Mr.
Yep.
Mr. Hanna?
Yeah. And I agree, I think, and thank you for bringing up Lawrence. It's a wonderful asset that we have, and there are a tremendous amount of opportunities for our community to be engaged and involved. We have a growing arts community here. It's another one of those elements that I talk about being on the cutting edge of change. It's one of those things people are looking for, is the arts. We've got a great foundation with the Performing Arts Center, our symphony, our community choirs, the Trout Museum of Art, the Children's Museum, the Paper Discovery Center, so many things. We've got a great foundation. And I understand where Broadway shows might be out of some people's reach, but here's the thing, and with the Performing Arts Center, that I just need to remind people, this community, out of its generosity, contributes about $2 million a year, year after year after year, to the Performing Arts Center to enhance its operations. And you know where that money goes? It goes to subsidize children. No child that goes to the Performing Arts Center will pay more than $5. And the reason behind that is to create this culture. It's to train the future audiences and to not have that wonderful building be the building that's not for me. It is for you. It's for everybody. It's owned by this community. And so it's a wonderful foundation to build on.
I started. Good.
You started, okay. So,
I've done that before. It gets confusing.
what was the total amount collected from the, was it the $20 vehicle tax? And did this go to roads, sidewalks, et cetera? Mr. Hanna and then Mr. Dufault?
Yeah, the total amount that was collected was about $1.4 million. It was meant to replace a revenue source that we used to have, which is called special assessments. And I give people credit for coming forward and saying, is this really fair? Asking that philosophical question. And it was really a kind of a conundrum of what is fair. And so, unlike other cities who have tackled the wheel tax as an additional source of revenue, this was a replacement source of revenue. And the second part of the question is, did it go for roads and sidewalks? Absolutely. It is a dedicated fund. It can only be spent on paving infrastructure in the city. And I appreciate that was our intention. I really appreciate the city council for saying, let's put that in writing. So our people know that when they pay that $20, that it is going to improve our infrastructure here. Interestingly enough, I've had a number of calls from other communities because this isn't the first time Appleton has plowed new ground in initiatives like this. In fact, I have a call that I have to return to the administrator here in Hortonville because her board is asking, how did that wheel tax work and how did you get it implemented? So that'll be a call I return tomorrow.
Mr. Dufault?
Yeah, I think the wheel tax was one of those examples of a policy where City Hall reluctantly listened because they definitely heard from residents that they didn't feel like a special assessment was a reasonable expectation for people. For a bill to show up, multi-$1,000s, even if you are a master budgeter, it's really hard to try to swallow a pill like that. And I'm one of the very first people to benefit from the new wheel tax because my road is getting redone just this year. And so, yeah, it's fantastic that when I register my car, $20 in addition to what I was paying earlier is going to help to cover the cost of that road. I still do get a bill for some portion of the improvements because every house is still going to pay a little bit. And that's for, I believe it's for the lateral that gets the water to your house, which is replaced as part of this. But I would like to see, now I believe the original number that was estimated was 1.7 million that the wheel tax would generate, and that's what it needed to replace. And so 1.4 is really close. And what happens is people realize, oh, I live in Grand Chute, I don't live in Appleton, when that extra $20 gets tacked on, so they correct that, and they don't pay that $20. And so it's not a perfect science. But I'd like to see every vehicle that travels on the streets pay the wheel tax, not just passenger cars. Buses are up the roads, and that's the city, so it doesn't make much sense for the city to pay itself, but there's semis and other things that use the roads that aren't paying a vehicle registration fee and the wheel tax. And so I know that those kind of businesses pay other taxes. We certainly don't want to diminish our competition, but I'd like to see everybody who uses the roads pitch in for that.
So we'll start with Mr. Duco and then with Mr. Hanna on this one. What is Appleton doing to prepare for climate change?
I gotta tell you, I don't know. Effort. Citizens of Appleton are doing a lot. People bike, that's a great thing to do personally to reduce their carbon footprint. But I've actually been talking a lot about a policy that would make a big difference in our collective carbon footprint, which is more dense infill development and less sprawl on the edge of the city. Again, from my seat on Plan Commission, I have seen the way we have exploded on the north side. Beautiful homes, wonderful families, great people. But it costs every resident of this city more money to build new water infrastructure and new fire stations and new service delivery to reach those neighborhoods that are so far from the middle of the city. And if we were to look in at the core of our city, that's downtown, but that's also the neighborhoods around downtown. And building in the neighborhoods to the neighborhood needs and desires is key to this. Because it can fit. It doesn't have to be shoehorned in. It's not like we're going to drop a 300-unit apartment building in the middle of a character neighborhood. Union Square development is a great example of how a multifamily development can fit the character of the neighborhood, increase residential density, improve our tax base without costing a lot more money to serve the residents of those buildings. And that's what I think the city should be doing more of, because it does have purview over land use and incentives that can help to drive this development.
Mr. Hannah?
I find that answer very interesting because as a member of the Plan Commission, Mr. Duclos votes for the new subdivisions and the things that come through on the north side. We really need to have a variety of housing options for people if we want to be an attractive city. There has to be a variety. I'm all for redevelopment. I'm all for more dense development in our downtown. I agree with that. But it can't be at the expense of all the other development that needs to happen. The infrastructure in the ground was put in the ground a long time ago and sized to appropriately serve what our future growth is. So that would be a waste to say, oh, we're not going to do that anymore. It would be a waste of the money that we already spent to serve that. So climate change was the question.
That's the question.
All right. Climate change is a question. So here's the answer to that. We've done a number of things as a city to make ourselves more green. I can tell you today, we set a goal, I forget how many years ago, to reduce the energy consumption by the city of Appleton by 20%. We've met that goal. We've reduced our energy consumption by about 25% over the course of, I think, it's probably 6 or 7 years, by instituting a number of small things that have added up. We are using the methane at our wastewater treatment plant and using it to produce energy and not flaring it up into the atmosphere anymore. We've done that. We're on a course to replace our streetlights with LED lights. I wish we could convince We Energies to do the same with the streetlights that they own. That's a tough sell to We Energies because that's anyway. There's a number of initiatives, and it's not that we haven't asked. We have asked them. But all the city-owned ones we have replaced with LEDs, and we're on that path to continue that. So we've done quite a bit to address the climate change issue.
Okay, now we will start with Mr. Hannah, and then go to Mr. Duclos. What would be the first item you would add to the budget? We don't hear that too often. Add to the budget, and this is a need, not a want. Like more police or more firefighters, a need, not a want.
Mm-hmm. We have those discussions, so let me tackle that first. Police and fire. We have extremely efficient police department and fire department. Through reorganization of our police department, without adding bodies, we've actually put more police officers on the street in the last 2 years. I think we have 4 more bodies on the street on patrol by flattening the administrative part of the police department, and it actually costs us less money to do that. Firefighting is an interesting question in terms of adding firefighters, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to add them one at a time, because we've got 6 stations and we've got a number of vehicles. Now, we're going to face a decision in a few years to add a vehicle at one of our stations, and at that time, when that need has been justified, we're going to have to hire 6 firefighters. Now, I'd rather phase that in over a number of years than all in 1 year, because that's a pretty big expense. Those are some of the strategies you use when you're putting your budget together, is you have to look out 3 or 4 years, and then when you see a big expense coming, find a way to phase it in over time, and we've done that as a way to really try to keep a handle on our overhead costs.
Yeah, real quickly, so for one, Plan Commissioner to vote against some of these developments would have absolutely 0 impact. And the way that you change this is not by being on Plan Commission, it's by being mayor, because it's staff that actually works with developers to put these plans together. So one vote against them at Plan Commission is not going to change this. That's why I'm running for mayor. I also believe that if we had one thing to add to the budget, it would be more resources for community development, and by specifically I mean neighborhood programs and outreach. If we can start at the neighborhood unit and build a sense of belonging and community and ownership, we might not have to have endless rounds of public input because people would know when there's a policy that's impacting them. More effective outreach in neighborhoods and more organization in neighborhoods would allow us to deputize and actually empower citizens to bring their neighbors together and to collect feedback on behalf of the city. That's a cost-effective way to improve City Hall's listening and the ability of people to influence projects. But that doesn't happen for no cost. People need training on how to be neighborhood organizers. They need training and resources to know how to effectively run a neighborhood meeting and to put together a neighborhood event. Those are the kinds of things that are good investments in our city because they make every neighborhood better. And those neighborhoods that choose to take advantage of those resources are actually going to be more attractive for people to live in. And those neighborhoods are the ones that are going to thrive. And so we can actually fuel the thriving of our neighborhoods.
I have 2 more questions to ask, so you see that. In what ways, this one's a little different. In what ways do you consider yourself progressive? What ways do you consider yourself conservative? What ways do you consider Appleton progressive, and what ways do you consider Appleton conservative?
Sure.
And that is a start with Mr. Duclo and then Mr. Hanna.
Thank you. I consider myself progressive because progress means getting better. And I see that in this city. People want their community to be better. And they're willing to give of themselves. They're willing to participate in order to make the community better. We have to talk about what better means in certain circumstances, but better is a progressive value. Improvement and self-reflection and critical analysis are progressive values that I think are perfectly appropriate to apply at the local level. I consider myself conservative because I don't believe in radical change. I believe in incremental change that's based on consensus building and people's input. So we can make ourselves better through a process of self-reflection and improvement, and do it in a way that moves at the pace that's going to keep people coming along. I think if you push too hard for change, you push people away. And in that way, those who are most passionate about specific issues can sometimes undermine the effectiveness of their own efforts. And it's the job of the mayor to balance those interests, to bring people together to feel like their voice is heard in the debate, and then see that voice reflected in the outcome. And I think too often we find people at the end feeling like, yeah, I was there, yeah, I got to talk, but I didn't really get to be heard. And so the progressive value that I think Appleton really embodies is that desire to be better. But the conservative mindset that says we got to take this change at a steady pace and not rush into it is really what I identify with.
People have labeled me progressively prudent. And I absolutely love that label. I embrace it fully. Because I think it accurately describes where I think a lot of people are. That they are fiscally, I don't like to use the word conservative, prudent. And like I said before, I think people don't mind paying taxes, and they don't mind you spending the money if you can demonstrate value for what they pay. So on the progressive side, it's about social issues. It's about understanding what's happening in society. And I think I've got a pretty good track record on that. We passed domestic partner benefits in the face of a lot of opposition. Not that we didn't listen, we did. But there comes a time to make a decision. And we embrace it. It sent a very positive, strong message to our business community who is out there fighting for people and resources to come in. Now they're saying, our community is welcoming and inclusive for you. We followed that up with being one of the first cities in the state to pass a local ordinance that bans discrimination on the business of gender expression. So we've done that. That has been progressive. That got some pushback. But again, it sends a message that we are inclusive. It doesn't matter who you are or where you've been, we welcome you here. And we've done that through our policy actions. And I think most people feel that. At the same time, we've been pretty darn prudent
Thank you.
with our money.
Okay, I see that our time is up, but, and we do have some questions, but what we do is we give all the questions in an electronic format to both of the candidates, and then we ask them to respond electronically as well, and so there will be a voter guide that will be on the League of Women Voters website. And that website, that guide will have the question and then both responses, so you can kind of look and compare, because I know we heard a lot of things tonight. So it's always nice to be able to go back and reread it. So I want to thank the candidates for Mayor of Appleton. Protect our democratic process by making yourselves available this evening. I also need to thank Elizabeth Eisen from the Appleton Public Library, and thanks to the members of the League who helped make this forum happen. Stephanie Mullaney, Deb Worth, Gail Hart, Cindy Filona, Jeannie Roberts, Lois Bressett, Elizabeth Laux. Finally, don't forget, if you need to register to vote, you need to know about absentee ballot requests, or you have questions about your voting district or polling place, we can help you at the back of the room. We have that information for you, and we'll help you all with that. Also a reminder that absentee balloting at City Hall, or if you want to call it in-person voting before the actual election, is at City Hall. That starts March 21st and it goes to April 1st. And the full election is on April 5th. Thank you to all of you, and don't forget to vote.